My name is Carol Peters, and I am so excited today to introduce you to our guest speaker, Naomi Asher. I met Naomi when she was serving at the United Way of Anderson County in Tennessee as their CEO. And she's been with the United Way for 9 years, recently left the United Way, and she's going to tell you more about her personal story, but left for a new nonprofit role at Boys and Girls Club. And she worked on a team of 4 at the United Way and has now a team of like 200 plus people, from what I understand. So Naomi's going to tell you all about that in her, as part of her presentation. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Naomi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you all and to get to see all these faces and reconnect a little bit with the United Way Network. Like Carol said, I was with United Way for 9 years and absolutely loved it. Previously to that, I was the executive director for a partner agency. And so it's kind of fun being back in the partner agency world again now and getting to work with multiple United Ways in this role has been really fun as well. So yes, we have a very large team here at Boys and Girls Club. And so wellness looks very different here than it did when we were a very small staff. So I've got some extra insights that I've got to add into here as well. I'm currently finishing up this was going to be like really the motivation to get this done, but I have not finished it yet. Finishing up my PhD. And it is focused on executive burnout in nonprofit professionals. And so I will be sharing quite a bit of information from my research. And then, of course, I will share my final dissertation if you need help sleeping when that's done. So I'm just going to jump in. And as y'all have questions or comments or anything, please feel free to add those into the chat. I love it when there's side discussions and as things pop into your mind, just go ahead and put that in there. So feel free to use the chat feature as much as y'all want. If you have a question as we go through this, I don't mind at all if you raise your hand, but we will be saving some time at the end as well to have some discussion and questions. So the current nonprofit landscape, we all know that there's been a lot of challenges, right, since in the last 4 years, particularly over the last 2 years, COVID-19 pandemic, the funding, and then the loss of that funding. So we're seeing the end of a lot of that pandemic dollars. They were very heavy coming out in late 2020, 2021, some into 22, and then they've really been ending. A lot of those ARPA dollars and other dollars are ending now. So we're seeing some pretty significant shifts with funding. There's been a lot of economic uncertainty. And so really a lot of concern around that as well, puts financial burden and stress on our nonprofits. We've had social unrest. As many of you, I'm sure, were paying attention in 2020, we saw a lot of movement within Black Lives Matter and other events that occurred across the country, creating quite a bit of social unrest and some calls for policy change and that kind of thing. Polarized political environment. I do not want to spend a lot of time on this today. I'm sure y'all don't either, but we know we are in an extremely polarized political world right now. And then natural disasters. So all of these things have put an enormous additional stress on our nonprofits, whether you are a United Way or another agency that is quick to respond to natural disasters, whether you are a United Way that does a lot in advocacy or another organization that's working with that. It's hard. It's even harder in a politically divisive community. Social unrest, knowing how to navigate those things on a local level. So we've seen a significant increase in the stress in the way that we address some of these things as nonprofit professionals. So the impact that that has on mental health, nearly 80% of nonprofit professionals report experiencing increased stress levels due to the pandemic and then all of these other post-pandemic shifts. So as we went through and did a pretty significant survey and then some follow-up interviews, what I consistently found is that 80% of the nonprofit professionals that I talked to said, yes, absolutely, this has had a significant impact on me and on my life. 42 report symptoms of depression, anxiety, or both. So yes, that's less than half, but 42% of our nonprofit professionals, our nonprofit leaders, are reporting symptoms that are pretty significant. And they can really affect our ability to do our job as nonprofit professionals. 72% report their stress and anxiety has increased over the last 2 to 4 years. So either that went from none to some, or it went from some to a lot. And I will say from the conversations and the interviews, most have said from some to more. So that shift, that 72%, has really been an increase, a significant increase in anxiety and stress. So as we talk about work-life balance and we talk about remote work, so one of the really cool things that I think we all agree about 2020 and what we lived through in the pandemic was the prevalence and the ease of remote work. So we've made it really easy to work from anywhere, which has all kinds of great benefits. And that's usually what we focus on. However, the shift to remote work and cloud-based access has really significantly blurred the lines between professional and personal life. I know even the other day I sent a quick reminder text to somebody on our staff and they sent me the response immediately. It was like 9:30 at night. And I was like, this was just a reminder for tomorrow. I don't know why you're doing this right now. Oh, it was no problem. It's all cloud-based anyway. I could pull it as easily now as I could in the morning. And that starts creating a problem, right? Where we're not having that distinct difference between home and work. We're living in a world of blurred lines. Remote work offers flexibility, but it brings longer work hours and increased difficulty disconnecting. What we also know from surveys and other research is that people who do not have a distinct separation, they don't have that full disconnect, carry that anxiety and they get burned out faster. And so what remote work does is where it used to be, oh, sure, I'll take a phone call from a board member because, 7 p.m. for them is the only time they can talk. Now it's we're working round the clock because everything is easy and it's on our phone. And so often, especially with nonprofits, we wear it like a badge of honor that we're working all the time or that we're accessible all the time. And what we know is that speeds up burnout, it increases anxiety, and it increases stress. So surveys also show that employees value remote work, while also showing that 70% of employees report a decrease in time off satisfaction and an ability to disconnect as being nearly impossible to impossible. And so what we mean by that is that when you go on vacation, it's so much harder to be completely checked out and say, I'm on vacation, there's nothing I can do about this, and increasingly easier to say, well, I won't take my whole laptop, but I'll take my tablet. I won't do this, but I'll do that. And so we're still finding ways to stay connected. We're not fully disconnecting. And what we know is that life satisfaction and decrease in stress occurs when people have at least 2 weeks a year completely disconnected in 4-day or more consecutive breaks. So you need to be taking at least 2 4-day consecutive day breaks to help combat the increase in stress and anxiety. And I don't know about y'all. I mean, you throw your hand up or give some kind of reaction if you're doing that, because I would love to see who is actually doing that. Because I don't see a lot of people that say that they are actually really and truly doing that at least twice a year. Oh, good job, Katie. Proud of you, girl. Keep it up. Okay, so financial pressures. The number one, it doesn't matter if you're in resource development or not, we all face financial pressures when we're in nonprofits, right? So disruptions in traditional funding streams, such as canceled events, less general donations, decreases in available grant dollars, have placed additional stress on nonprofit leaders. So we've seen that finance related stress increase significantly. Financial pressure translates as job insecurity. So it doesn't matter as leaders how often we say, you're not going to lose your job if we lose this grant. It still is there in the back of your mind. If we don't have the money, of course, I don't have a job. And to some extent, that's true, right? So financial pressure translates as job insecurity. Salary freezes or layoffs and increased workloads for remaining staff. That's what we start seeing happen, right? So we can't decrease services. We've got to make sure that those pieces are still in place. And so as people are either put on temporary leave or their positions are eliminated, the remainder of that work goes to existing employees. Recruitment and retention is increasingly difficult. So again, we're having a harder time, and I don't know if that's everywhere. Throw it in the chat if you're having an easier time with recruitment, because I know we are really struggling with recruitment. So I don't know if that's everywhere or not, but the surveys I did in the markets that I looked at, we're having a hard time with recruitment and retention. Pandemic related funding streams, tax incentives, all of those things are coming to an end. That's causing the sunsetting of programs that we have been putting in place and working and running for the last 2 to 4 years. This leads to decreased client services and increased pressure on nonprofit leaders. So as we're looking at these different things that we've had in place that were responses to the pandemic, that maybe some of them have been working incredibly well, they're still getting sunset because we haven't been able to find additional ways to continue those programs. Compassion fatigue. So there is a ton of compassion fatigue studies with our medical industry. There's lots and lots of that, but there are none in as we look at nonprofit professionals, or even there's very little in social work as well. So that's one of the things that I'm seeking to address through this research and this work. Working closely with individuals and communities experiencing trauma and hardship, especially seeing consistently unmet needs. I'm sure you all can identify with that. It causes mental and emotional fatigue. So what happens is we see people that are hungry and they're not getting less hungry. They don't have somewhere to live, and it is not getting easier to find them somewhere to live. We're seeing these chronic problems persist, and that can manifest in one of two ways, where either we're suffering that emotional fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, and then the other side of that is a lot less empathy and a lot less care, which then can translate into less work and less impact being made on our clients. 67% of nonprofit leaders and staff report an increase in daily exhaustion, depression, and a feeling of hopelessness. 73% report feeling a general decrease in empathy and increase in frustration with work. So all of this is saying, hey, we're not doing well in nonprofit, right? We're really starting to struggle. So as we talk about DEI and IDEA challenges, what we saw was the world and nonprofits continuing to grapple with issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and putting those into action. Our Black, Indigenous, and people of color employees report higher work stressors directly related to systemic racism, discrimination, and microaggressions in the workplace. So on top of everything else that we're talking about, these groups are also experiencing additional levels of stress and frustration in their workplace. And then pressure has been put on our nonprofits to have these DEI DEI or IDEA plans and policies, yet very few supports have been put in place to achieve these standards. And so we're being told you need to do this. Here are some guidelines, but then there's not the funding to enact a lot of these. There's not the support systems that we need to ensure that we're doing that well. And so what we're finding is it's just another layer of stress with very little support. And again, that continues to lead to frustration and stress, anxiety, and increased concern in the workplace. Are y'all depressed yet? Like you should be, because this is terrible, right? Okay, so the impact of all of this, high levels of stress, burnout, turnover. Oh, Andrea, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad you feel seen. There is something healing about knowing that you're not alone in this battle. And so high levels of stress, burnout, and turnover undermine productivity, creativity, and employee morale. And so this is part of why we are finding ourselves in a situation where we're just feeling exhausted. We're feeling very much like, is what we're doing making a difference? Can we still make an impact? How do we continue to do this work when we don't really see the fruits of what we are putting into it? I really can't disconnect, even though I know that's what I need to do. All of this begins to compound. Organizations that neglect staff well-being risk reputational damage, decreased donor confidence, and challenges in recruiting and retaining top talent. And so when I talk about reputational damage, there's a few different things. One is that a lot of younger employees really want to know that they're coming to work somewhere that is not going to burn them out quickly, that is going to be a very healthy work environment. The other thing is, and I didn't put a lot of this information in here, but the other thing is that with all this anxiety, burnout, and stress, one of the other things that we see from this is an increase in dangerous behaviors and high risk behaviors. That might be substance misuse, it might be suicidal ideation, it might be embezzlement, it might be any of those kinds of things. So what we know is that when our leaders are feeling burned out, their compassion fatigue is through the roof, that's when something bad is going to happen. Stuff's not going to get turned in like it needs to get turned in. If a board kind of takes a back seat a little bit, you never know what kinds of things may come out of that as far as unethical behaviors. We certainly don't want to see anybody else dealing with suicidal ideation and those kinds of things, substance misuse. So this is on a much bigger scale. That's part of what makes this really important information to put out there. And yes, Juliet, to your point, saying it out loud is really important to get solutions and proactive support. If we're not having this conversation, we really can't begin to address it, especially not as effectively as we can when we come together and have conversations and put our minds together to start talking about what's working. More than 65% of nonprofit professionals surveyed left nonprofits within the last 2 years to go to private industry. So what we're seeing is not necessarily nonprofit professionals going to other nonprofits. We're seeing them leave nonprofit. Also in some of the interviews was consistently hearing that people were leaving for less money, more benefits, but less money, more work-life balance, less stress and anxiety. And so I found that really interesting as well, that we do see a lot of people leaving nonprofit for less money. So what are some solutions? And this is where y'all really jump in and blow up that chat, because I want to hear what your thoughts are with this as well, especially like selfishly, I need this information to have as a counterpart to my research. And then just because we are here, we are together, we are talking about this, we feel seen, let's come up with some solutions that might work for all of us. So flexible work environments with boundaries. Remote work with flexible hours hybrid work models with blackout times and no vacation work allowances. So I saw that somebody else was talking about their wellness committee. We also have one here. So I'll talk about this from two different perspectives. One is when I had a very small staff, it was really difficult to say, no, that's okay. I don't want you to respond to anything over the next week when I know there's only a handful of us. And if I really need an answer and I know you're the only one that could possibly have that answer, it's really hard for me to just say, please don't respond. What became very much the MO at a small organization was, don't respond to email. I'll text you if there's anything urgent. The way that it is here in a much larger organization where there's more resources and more access to different things is we can very clearly say, you are not to respond, period. You are not to respond. Because chances are, if there's a question or an issue, there's going to be more than one person that can answer it. So I do want to keep this in context because one thing that I found extremely frustrating as a CEO of a smaller organization is that, oh, I love that. Giving every Friday off in June. Love that. And July. Oh, and July. Even better. I love that, Carol. So it's one of those things where we need to keep it realistic. If you can do that as a team of four, I think that is phenomenal. If you can't do that as a team of four, I think it is reasonable to just say, we can't do that, but what can we do? And so maybe it is just, I'll have to text you if there's an absolute emergency, but really being clear and defining what emergency is and making sure that it really is the very last option, right? So I think part of it is just us really trying to figure out what works for our organizational sides, where we are in our organizational maturity, and where, how do we put some other things in place so the chances of needing somebody when they are on a break are much lower. So having remote work and flexible hours can be extremely helpful, especially if you've got a family with small kids, you've got employees with other obligations, but making sure that they also know you're not to be on call 24/7 just because you have flexible hours or because you work remote. Flexibility then allows employees to better manage their work-life balance, reducing their commuting stress. This one is huge. I now have a 30-minute commute, and there are definitely days for me that, which probably does not seem a lot to some of y'all, but again, keeping it in context, I come from having a 4-minute commute for my entire professional career. 30 minutes feels like a lot. But when there is that kind of commuting stress, there are definitely days for me that I'm like, I could get a lot more done if I don't have to head across town, if I don't have to get like every 45 minutes be heading somewhere else, I'm going to be able to be a lot more productive and a lot more put together if I can switch some of these to virtual calls and emails and things of that nature. So reducing commuting stress and then tailoring work schedules to family commitments is incredibly important. It's very valuable. And these are things that can really, really help when it comes to burnout to ensure that families feel supported and employees feel like they don't have to choose between work and family or work and even hobbies, work and other things as well. Oh, I love that, Ivy. My boss and I were just talking about that. Everybody on our C team now has one day a month that our schedule is completely clear. And so the admin goes in and makes sure that we get to pick it. And then we just make sure that it's like a blocked out, like you can't put anything on the calendar. And that's been really, really cool because it helps a lot to just say, this is a day that I can get really caught back up. And if I don't need to get like really caught back up, if I've been staying on top of it, it's a day that I can drink my coffee slowly. It's a day that I can make calls that I want to. It's a day that I could sit down and reconnect with Carol or, one of y'all and just say, hey, how are you doing? and here are some things that are going on in my world, like dreaming big. That's been incredibly helpful as well. So if that is something that you can do, I highly recommend that, even if it's only once a quarter or twice a year or something like that. Recognizing the importance of mental health is really, really valuable. I think that it's something that is easy to kind of dismiss, and to have a culture that doesn't value mental health, similarly to wearing that badge of honor. I never take vacation, I don't take sick days, wearing that badge of mental health days are for the week. No matter how bad I'm feeling, I'm going to be here. Recognizing mental health is valuable, and that's not a badge of honor, I think, is important. That's just a culture shift that we need to be making and changing. Providing access to mental health resources, counseling services, and employee assistance programs. One thing that we did that I put in place when I was at United Way is I worked with our free medical clinic. I worked with several of our mental health providers, and we made sure that we had supports put in place. So if you are struggling, you can go to our partner agencies for free of charge, and they will see our employees. We didn't have a very good benefits package at all. It was just not something that we were able to get put in place while I was there. So what we did was try to come up with really creative solutions, and that was one of them, was finding access that wasn't costing the organization money. We were using our partners and providing opportunities in that way, and valuing mental health through that. We work to destigmatize mental health issues. Again, it's around here, especially, we have said take a mental health day. Look, you don't have to be like coughing and sneezing to not feel good. If you need to take the day to get in the right headspace, by all means, do that. If you need to take a morning, do that. So we talk about it as if it is anything, just like going to get a COVID test. If you need to just sit down and really figure out where your brain is this morning, love it. Do that. Let's get that. Let's destigmatize that it does not make you weak or any less of a good employee to need to take a few hours for yourself. Providing timely support to staff members in need. This is as simple as having cards when somebody's going through something, making sure that we've had several people out for bereavement over the last year. We've had one of my team has been out helping her mom through a lot of different medical issues, and it's just as simple as sending a group text. So making sure that employees feel supported to go and deal with what it is they need to deal with. Making sure that if there is a staff member that is having some kind of mental health crisis, that you are being supportive, making sure that they're taking care of themselves, being reactive to those as quickly as possible. And then promoting a culture of psychological well-being. Again, how is everybody doing? We do a lot of, like, it's cheesy and stupid, but if I'm walking into your office, I'll say, how are you today? Like, just give me, like, from loving it, having a great day, to absolutely not, I don't want to have this conversation today. So I love that. Thank you, Carol. You're so encouraging. It's sweet. Good day. I'm having a good day today. Yesterday I was not. So I was walking into people's offices and I was like, it's better than it could be, but it's certainly not even like midway. I'm not having a good day. So if we're talking about something, probably my attitude is not going to be the best today. I'm not going to be as creative in finding solutions. I'm going to be annoyed easier. And just promoting that, that's okay. You are allowed to have a bad day. Now, if somebody's having bad days every day, that's where we maybe need to talk about some intervention services. But it's a good thing to know where everybody is. How are you feeling? What's your stress level? What do you have going on? Just always being aware of where your team is with that, and figuring out ways to support each other is really important. I will brag on, I think Jennifer Wackerhagen's on here. She is phenomenal in this area. She does such a good job with her staff in making sure that everybody is good and in a good place, and they all love each other and support each other really, really well. So shout out to United Way Blount County in Tennessee, because they're doing that extremely well. Partner with local counseling centers. houses of worship and faith, and others to provide support to your employees. We also had a really great relationship with our houses of worship and faith in our community to have people that were ready to come in and pray with clients or just sit with clients to work through issues with clients and our staff. So if somebody was really going through something, we made sure that there were a lot of different options as far as faiths and different belief systems to make sure that everybody had options and they had access to that. And then group wellness, classes and activities and that kind of thing. Here at Boys and Girls Club, we have a phenomenal wellness team, and we have a lot of these kinds of things put in place where we have some classes and activities and things to do together. It may not be possible for you, but definitely consider that if you can, just at least all getting out of the office. We have made it so that at least a half a day, a quarter, we go out, we get lunch, we go for a walk, we do other things. We're out of the office, but we're still together just to get to know each other, just to support each other and find ways that we can better uplift and encourage each other. There's also a lot of apps like, didn't even realize I had this slide up next. So technology-enabled wellness solutions. You can provide meditation apps and virtual wellness platforms. That's something that we are looking into here at Boys and Girls Club. We had one with Calm when I was with United Way before because we were very small. It was not a large expense. We didn't offer nearly as much with benefits as we could, but we did find a way to do that. So look into that. It's often a very low expense. Online fitness classes, sometimes you can sign up for groups with that as well. So that's another option, doing that together or just providing it for your employees so that they can use that and have access to it. Telehealth services. That's another thing. Even if you're just reevaluating your insurance carriers, make sure that they have telehealth, and that includes telehealth mental health services as well. Allow staff chats allow convenient and consistent connection. And so what I mean by that is using text threads, or if you're on Google, using Google Chats. If you're with Microsoft, it will be something like Teams. Being able to do that, I think, decreases the pressure a little bit. So our team really enjoys doing that, just so that we can get around to answering when, like, if I answer you right now, it's going to break my train of thought. So that's another kind of thing where it's open door around here, but should the door be closed, hey, I'll just shoot you a text or send a message. That way I can get it out of my head, but also you don't have to answer it right now. Those kinds of things can really, really help when it comes to mental health and focus. Implement staff-driven wellness initiatives. So like several people have said, we used to do a 5K for one of our partner agencies together when I was at United Way. So there's a lot of different options. It can be something little like that, or it can be something so much larger and more significant. There are a ton of different ways to implement this kind of thing. If you are doing something that works really, really well, throw that in the chat as well. And then a formalized belonging series. I love this idea, and we are definitely talking about this with our wellness group right now, because a lot of people just simply don't understand that others don't feel as at home as quickly or as easily as they do. And so this is really, really important for all kinds of different reasons. It's not just gender or race that this relates to. It can be for so many different reasons why people feel like they're not feeling a sense of belonging. We've got an individual on my team who struggles with dyslexia. And so that really puts her at a disadvantage for written communication. And that was something that we kind of got out in one of our staff chats and check-ins, that it does feel, she doesn't feel as included when we use a lot of written communication versus verbal communication. And so understanding that and how to communicate with her was really, really important. And so formalizing a belonging series, this is, again, something that we're going to be working on. We're going to actually be using it and including it through an art project that we're going to be doing. And so putting that all together and then giving expression to that as well. Yes, exactly, Andrea. It ties in so perfectly into the DEI and IDEA in your organization. This is one support that can be put in place and implemented that can really, really help as we're talking about implementing those bigger DEI structures and things of that nature. So leadership has to commit to employee well-being as being essential. Leadership sets the tone and the culture. And as much as we want to say sometimes, well, this is the way that this department is, or this is the way the staff has been, or the board has just always been like this, the leadership sets the tone and culture, but it does take some very brave leadership. And it takes a lot of relationship to be able to do that as well. So getting to on a really good relationship level with your board leadership can really, really help with that as well. When leaders prioritize and model behaviors that promote work-life balance, open communication, and self-care, they set a positive example for the entire organization. Culture cannot exist without this being modeled from the top. So this is one of those things that I have had to learn and relearn, that when I say, don't open this email, like I don't want you working outside of work hours, that it doesn't work. People are not going to listen to that. Do what I say, not what I do, because it still puts the pressure on that staff that you're working late and they are not. So modeling that, you can use, I have started trying to implement using timers on my emails. So if I need to get something out of my head, that's what it is for me, is I can't concentrate or move on until something comes out of my head and I know that it's dealt with. I will set timers. You can use their apps like Boomerang and others. I think even Teams will do it, or Microsoft does it in Outlook. So you can set timers so that those emails are not going out until the morning. So if you have to do it that way, just remember there are some tips and tricks, even with text messages, that you can set those on timers. But setting that example of boundaries is incredibly important as leaders. Establish organizational boundaries between work and personal life through clear expectations around work hours and availability. And so being clear, hey, can you go to this event on Tuesday night? Are you asking your employee to go personally, or are you asking them to go as part of work? And if they're going as part of work, how are you going to flex their hours later in the week? So there are little things like that that as nonprofit professionals, we really don't think about. And a lot of people will say, I don't mind going to an ice cream social on a Tuesday night as it being personal, but just be careful when you're putting those expectations on people and you see them doing that. I certainly don't think there's a problem with it every once in a while, but if somebody is consistently doing that, they're not going to be able to consistently get that break. Offer flexible scheduling options, including compressed work weeks, flex time, telecommuting. These are all things that we briefly touched on already. This accommodates diverse needs and preferences, and just be really clear on how that impacts other employees. So it's all well and good to offer something and say that you do it, but then when it actually doesn't work, that can also be tricky. So making sure that you are thinking all the way through before you offer some of these options and ensuring that it's not going to hinder somebody else. Provide guidance on time management techniques. We've got some goal setting classes and things of that nature coming up with our employees so that we can help with time management. Encourage regular breaks and the use of paid time off to prevent burnout and enhance working hour productivities. Rhonda, that absolutely, that people work better at different times. So I love that. It's all about knowing your team, knowing the people around you, understanding how they work, how they communicate. When you, I love that you may receive emails. I love that, love that, love that, love that so much. I've seen it more and more on people. And I really love when people do that because it really helps even just reading through and seeing that, it really helps you to kind of stop and say, okay, there's not pressure on me because I was working at 6 o'clock this morning, right? So just, I think those kinds of reminders are really important. Provide training for recognizing signs of mental health issues, how to offer support and appropriate resources. This one I feel pretty passionately about. This could just be worked in. Use one of your agency partners that focuses on mental health. This is something that can be pretty easily implemented most of the time. Create channels for employees to express concerns, provide feedback, and share ideas openly and transparently. Not everybody, again, communicates in the same way. Some people really struggle to verbally communicate when they are frustrated or stressed. And so having additional ways to communicate is important as well. Conduct consistent check-ins with staff to assess well-being, address challenges, and celebrate accomplishments. Celebrate accomplishments, that's a really big one. So making sure that we do that. It's not just weekly check-ins, where are you on your goals? It's bringing somebody an ice cream or bringing donuts, like anything little actually does translate to something bigger. Foster a culture of respect, belonging, and inclusion by celebrating different perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds. When somebody shares something, to fight against that urge to say, we've tried that before, or maybe that worked there, but it wouldn't work here. We want to celebrate the differences in perspectives. So making sure that you are doing that. Implement policies, practices, promoting equity and fairness in hiring, promotion, and decision-making processes. Reach out to local HR groups that they can give a lot of help with this kind of thing as well. Provide training on unconscious bias, cultural competence, inclusive leadership to promote diversity and combat discrimination within the organization. Look around at who's doing that well. Ask Carol who's doing that well. These are overwhelming things to think about, but I promise you, you can find resources that will be willing to help, and just take a little bit of time to be able to do that with your staff annually. Celebrate achievements, milestones, contributions, their formal recognition, whatever that might look like. Express appreciation for team members' efforts, dedication, and impact. So making sure that your staff feel appreciated, that they feel seen, that you are asking them, how do they like to be celebrated? How do they like to be appreciated? You don't want to give somebody a whole bunch of recognition and public attention if that is not what they like. You don't want to bring somebody a coffee if they don't drink coffee. So just knowing those kinds of things about your employees is really, really important. So consider what you're doing well. Think about all of these things. What are you doing well? Take a moment and celebrate that. You guys have put some really cool stuff in the chat, so I don't want you to feel discouraged if there are things in here that you're like, I've never thought about that before. Everybody here is doing something amazing, and your employees are feeling that positivity. Let's just talk to each other and figure out additional things that we can be doing that are low cost or low stress, that work well for an organization the size that you are in. So it's not, you're not alone with these things. So take a moment, consider what you are doing and celebrate that, and then create an action plan for the rest. So if there are things in here that you're like, yeah, I really like that idea, jot it down, reach out to others and get some other resources. Throw those in the chat, what you're doing, or where you might want help. And let's rely on each other and use each other to get other ideas and thoughts and resources. So what questions or comments do y'all have? I know we don't have long. We've got about 6 minutes, but if y'all have anything you want to share, I would love to hear it.
It was an excellent presentation. I tried to honor people's comments and questions in the chat as we were going. There was so many, and I'm happy to read through a few, but if somebody wants to unmute and just share what they were talking about in the chat, that would be great.
Oh, I see, Angie. Can you give examples of formalized belonging series? I've seen some really cool stuff. There are a lot of books. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I will send my list of books. But I've heard of organizations doing book series. We looked into that as a team. We decided to go through this art route, which we're really excited about. And it was somebody that does really cool creative DEI work with different organizations all over town. She volunteered to come and do it with our team, see if we like it, and then take it to the full organization if we do. But part of it is just going to be allowing our team to express themselves through different forms of art and then talking about it after. And so we're really excited about that. We think it's going to be really cool. I will definitely give you all an update on how that goes. Part of it is going to be a mosaic at the end that we're going to get to keep and have in our office. And that's going to represent all of us in a really cool way. So there are definitely a lot of different, like super formal, like presentation, people coming in and talking about different things from inclusive language and diversity to communication styles, personality testing. There's a whole bunch of different ways to look at belonging, but finding something that's going to work for your team is as valuable as everybody participating in it, I think.
We had another question by Chokitha who asked, what advice would you give to help leadership embrace mental health activities for staff?
So that is, again, another reason why I wanted to do the research that I'm doing, because I think if we can start to begin to show leadership that if we do not address burnout, anxiety, depression, we are going to have high risk behaviors. We are going to have high turnover. We are going to have a hard time filling positions. So we just have to be able to frame that in a way that says, in the long term, this is more cost effective for us, and it is more effective. It's more effective with time management as well, because one of the things that we know is people who fully disconnect are 50% more productive when they come back. So if you're wearing people out, they're accomplishing such a lower percentage of what they could accomplish if they were feeling and getting the appreciation and the support that they need. So I think bringing it back to that and the importance of it, where it's not focused on like the touchy feely, like people feel sad and burned out, and that can easily be blown off by some people. We can bring that to them with tangible numbers and support and say, we know that if we allow our staff to continue to feel this way, this is where we're headed. These are the types of things that are going to begin to happen. Yeah. And I'll make sure that y'all, so you guys can, I think, Caitlin said she would send this presentation to y'all. If there's any additional data that you want, do not hesitate to reach out to me. And I will do my very best to get it for you if I don't already have it. So if there's other data that would be helpful for you, for one, I would love to just know what kind of data that you would be interested in. And for two, I may already have it. And if I don't, I would love to help you find it.
So I just wanted to comment, there was a comment in the chat by Ivy about their organization recently adopted for 1 day of birthday hours instead of small gift cards or random lunches, which I thought was a great idea, and just being thoughtful around what we can do to help ensure people get some extra time off or extra hours off. And then I noticed that Eric Artis is on and Christy Shepard, and both of them I believe have wellness committees or have a focus within their United Ways on wellness. And I just wanted to ask if either of them may want to share anything. I know Eric's been kind of in and out, but I know there is definitely a focus on that. So Christy, I wasn't sure if there was something you wanted to share about what's going on in Dane County, Wisconsin.
Sure, happy to. This was also amazing. So thank you, Naomi, for your presentation and really well wishes for your research. I can't wait to see all that you compile. So we have a number of staff committees, and as our staff of about 60, everyone needs to serve on a committee. So this is just one of those, but as we look at our values as an organization, wellness is one of those values. So our committee, we plan programs, information sessions, and we've really taken the broadest look at wellness. So it might be financial wellness, and we have some advisors coming in to share out on tips. We have health. We have some regular check-ins with like a group that goes and walks every Wednesday at lunch. We have someone who offers stretching. She has a background in training, so kind of tapping into our staff and their interest and skills, but then also bringing in experts. So I was going to send the kind of the position committee charter to the folks who requested it, but you can at least see kind of what our directive is, I guess, if you will, for what we're wanting to do as a team. And I think, again, it's the staff coming up with the things, and then we have the endorsement, of course, from the leadership. And we work very closely with our HR department as well.
Excellent. Eric, did you want to share anything about what you're doing at Mile High United Way in Denver?
Sure. Sorry, jumping on late. We try to be intentional about what we do, because I know a lot of us have probably tried things because we thought it would work and staff kind of have shunned the program. So we have a well-being committee. We also have added well-being as part of our annual employee engagement survey. We conduct pulse surveys. Based on those surveys, we've instituted a sabbatical program. We've created a summer flex time program where all staff are off every other Friday. We continue to be hybrid, which is great for the staff. And normally we work 3 days in the office, which those 3 are of your choice. We do have an all-staff Wednesday where everyone comes together. We've gone as far as each of our all-staff meetings, we have someone that walks us through a mindful or wellness session before the all-staff meeting. So we kind of get off refreshed and ready to think. And we also partner with Kaiser, our medical provider, and they provide us with a Mindful Monday and Wellness Wednesday calendar each quarter that we submit to staff, that allows them to do things on their own as well as with their families, because sometimes the family is the forgotten gem in this. So we try to include families as well. For instance, yesterday we just did a flu clinic on site and invited family to come in as well to say, hey, we want you to be as healthy. And that really shows staff that we try to think about the entire person versus just, hey, we'll take care of you while you're here at work. We're really trying to take care of them all the time.
That's excellent. I love Mindful Mondays and Wellness Wednesdays. That's great. Thank you for sharing all that, Eric.
Well,
Were there other people who wanted to ask any last questions? We have time for at least one. I know there was a question by Andrea about some additional research in the chat. So Naomi is going to pull some stuff together, and she can, absolutely provide directly to any of you that might have interest. So I can get Andrea's email over to Naomi to get that information.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you for all your comments and stuff in the chat. Oh, Savannah, I love you bring your dog to work. We used to do that too. And we're not allowed to have dogs in my current building. So we're all sad about that, but we do share pictures of our animals a lot. And, yeah, so there's lots of different things that we can do. Just sometimes we have to recognize that, taking one day off to do something fun and help get rejuvenated can help us be more productive in the long term. But it's really hard to remember that when it feels like every day is crisis, right? I just said this morning, it feels like it's been a month since Monday already. And so when you're in the middle of everything and feeling like you're drowning, it can be difficult, but just find a few friends that help you keep accountable to prioritizing wellness and hang in there. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today.
Thank you so much, Naomi. I think based on the commentary and the in the chat and all the great questions and just feedback. This was a very valued session. So thanks for the time that you invested in United Way Next, in this community, and all of these individuals who are on the screen today. I know I cherish the time I spend with you and all of you. And just really, this filled me up being a part of the session. So we want to make sure that we invite you back for our next chapter chats, which is happening next Wednesday. This may be appropriate for people who are thinking about they're either in a career transition, have recently left a role, wherever you're serving, you're considering what's next for you in your career, maybe are pre-retirement or nearing retirement or in retirement, and you're saying, what's next? What am I supposed to be doing? So we've just developed this as a series. Our next one is next Wednesday, the 18th, and it's, I believe, from 12 to 1 Eastern over the lunch hour. And it's a real informal roundtable that just kicked off in July. And then we also want to make sure that each of you know that we do support local United Way staff with mentors. So if you're feeling like you need to talk to somebody outside of just your normal daily job and you're like, hey, I could benefit from speaking with someone, we have members who are retired, who are alumni, and also current staff across the network that have agreed to volunteer and be mentors for local United Way staff. So you can always send me a message in the chat or email me at Carole, C-A-R-O-L-E, .peters@uww.unitedway.org. And Caitlin can throw that in the chat in case you need it. We are so grateful to all of you for being a part of today's session, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next one, whichever one it is that you decide to sign up for. So with that, without any further ado, we hope that you have a fantastic week and weekend ahead, and be sure to take some time for you. Thanks, everybody.